now. If you don't want to be recorded, just have your video off, and that'll be fine. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Sorry about this. I'm trying to deal with multiple disasters at once. Okay, so here we go. Can everyone see my screen on their computer?
Yep.
Okay, so just wanted to do a bit of an intro to OWASP. Obviously, OWASP, we're OWASP Birmingham. In lockdown, everyone is welcome to come and be a honorary Brummie for the evening and participate. So who are we? So there's Nath and me, who have been chapter leads for about a year now, just over a year. Obviously, we used to have meetups in the city. We had a great meetup at Pinsent Masons, where Christian, who's one of our panelists, is the CISO. We've had meetups at other locations in the city, and our goal really, Nath and I's goal, is to use OWASP as a bit of a platform in the city to create connections in cybersecurity, whether they be kind of connections between you know, the audit side of security and the technology side of security, you know, people at the university who are maybe doing a undergraduate degree, to, you know, CISOs like Christian, or people, you know, more experienced in the business, and just creating that connection and creating a forum really. So we've had fantastic technical talks, and we have some not so technical discussions like tonight. And really, it's all about the community for us. We're just a very informal kind of group that just likes to bring people together around cybersecurity. Nate's back. Do you want to take over for the little intro bit?
Yes, can you all hear me?
Yes.
Good stuff. Thanks, Jim. Thanks for the seamless transition as my router died. You can give me any kind of visual clues if I go again. Anyway, thanks everyone for joining. Really excited about tonight. I'm sure Jim's explained what we're doing today and who we are. I did overhear the last bit of Jim saying that we're a broad church. We want to bring together lots of the community of the West Midlands and in Birmingham. Obviously opportunities to widen our voice, to take advantage of the current pandemic and the lockdown is welcome in many ways, to highlight what we can do and all the good stuff. It'd be remiss of me if I didn't give you a brief overview first of what OWASP is and what we attempt to do. So we're a volunteer-led, free, open community. We're here to espouse all the great things that are cyber security and application security. We're free, open to everybody, and essentially, as it says there, we want to make security visible. So you and I are all protected when we consume applications, consume services over the internet now, which is pretty much almost everything we do, I imagine, especially in the lockdown as well. So everyone is free to participate. It's free and open to everybody. All the events are free, such as this, such as the ones that OWASP London put on. Other areas, there's one in Cambridge. They're dotted around all over the United Kingdom and the world, in fact. The only things that aren't free are our conferences. So we have some big conferences across the world, like Dublin and San Francisco and other areas. So they're not free, but to attend these meetings certainly are, and normally in better circumstances. We may be sharing a beer or a soft drink and perhaps a bit of food in a meeting, but no doubt we'll get there. We'll get back there soon. Everyone who works for us, or what volunteers, me and Jim do this in our spare time when we can. Reduce spare time often, but yeah, we are all volunteers. We're all here to give back to the community. That's the reason why I put my hand up about 18 months ago to reboot the OWASP Birmingham chapter, and that was to give a little bit back. I'd consumed far too many pizzas at OWASP London, so I think it was only my turn. Some of us on the call today will be members. It's $50 per year, and you do get some discounts on some of the global events that I mentioned earlier on that we put together, but also is a way of benefiting the community making sure that that OWASP can put out all the resources that it's known for and continue to thrive as a foundation. We are, as I said, voluntary led, so we do rely on memberships from both a corporate perspective and an individual perspective. And should you feel like you would like to become a member, then all the details are on OWASP.org website, and I would encourage you to take a think of that and see if you'd like to become a member. So I think that brings me to tonight's agenda. So slightly changing the order of play. But yeah, we've gone through the welcomes, and hopefully we're all settled in this hot weather. Essentially,
yeah, we'll have a break at 7 for about 10 minutes, so it's changed around a bit. Other than that,
yeah,
it's more or less.
Yeah, but essentially the parts are the same though. So we're going to talk. We're going to talk today about the new world order we find ourselves in. We're going to talk about how we can build a career, what the new world order may look like, and I know that certainly some of the meetups we've had previously, we've had people join from all parts of their career. Whether that's university students or mid-level or experienced people, but still, I think how we build a security career is relevant to all of us as we make the journey through. So tonight's panelists, I'm very pleased to highlight the panelists we've got today. We have had one person fall the last, I'm afraid. Anish Chowan, who's the founder and CEO of Equilibrium Security, for family reasons can't make it. That was a last minute call off. He and I are both disappointed. He's been a good sponsor, been trying to get him on the panel for a while, so that's a shame, but he'll be back at some point, no doubt. But we've still got a great triumvirate that you can see on the screen there. We've got Christian Toon, CISO of Pinsent Mason, who has hosted one of our events before and is a keen sponsor of ours. We've got Vladlena, Benson, Director of Cybersecurity at Aston University, who has spoken at one of our events in the past. And also we've got the author of a book that I own, and I'm sure many of you may do as well, Michael Brunton-Spall as well. And expertly moderated would be my co-lead, Jim, who's already taken some of the baton tonight. So responsibility is very much, he's taken that baton on. So yeah, I look forward to the evening. Jim, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Anyone who knows me knows that it won't be expertly moderated. Indeed, it will be a complete shambles. But I definitely second everything you said about our fantastic panelists. And thanks to them all. I guess so. I mean, such a hot night this evening. We've got about 23 on, so we might be able to make the conversation a little bit more interactive. One thing I'm really keen to do is just make it a really interesting conversation, and I'm really hopeful about the sort of topics that we're going to get into. So where we wanted to start with is just, I wanted to go you know, maybe we'll start with you, Vladlena, but I wonder if you'd just I mean, introduce yourself and the role that you do at the moment, your leadership role at Aston Business School. But I wonder if you could just tell us about how you got into cybersecurity. What was your journey really? And then we'll go through each of the panelists.
All right, thank you, Jim. So I am here actually with my ISACA hat on. So I serve on the board of Information Systems Audit and Control Association, which is covering the UK Central. So it's a chapter which is based in Birmingham. And ISACA, as you probably have heard, looks after a number of cybersecurity and various other auditing certifications. So seasoned CISO and so on is one of the some of the certifications that they look after. I have recently been appointed to serve on the UK Cybersecurity Council. I'm looking after the work stream on qualifications. So it's a massive project that is originally instigated by DCMS, Department for Digital Communication and Sports. And I have a day job as well, just like anyone here. And I'm professor of cybersecurity management at Aston University. And
There, I direct a research center, so hope to talk to you about exciting research projects that I have going on at the moment. How have I ended? What was my journey into fashion? It is something that did not come from the outset, I suppose. I'm US educated, and I completed my PhD in computing and engineering at the University of Texas in Dallas. I never thought that I will end up in academia at all, because we worked very closely with what was called the Plano network corridors, or Alcatel, various other, AT&T and so on. Nortel networks were just around the campus, and I thought that this is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But basically my entry into this career, I only owe it to various political events. So 9/11 came around, and change of, I don't want to say leadership, but thought and so on across Atlantic. So I moved to the UK, and it's been 18 years or so, and this is where my cybersecurity career started.
So you were a techie, and you moved into cybersecurity and leadership.
Exactly, and so I come from a very technical background. So my MSc was in computing, my PhD was around some software testing and so on. So I'm more of kind of a later entrance into this field. Cool,
thank you. So let's go with Christian. Could you just tell us a bit about what your leadership role is in cybersecurity, and what's your journey to get there?
Sure. Well, like probably everyone on this call, it's never been, I guess, the same. For me, I kind of got into InfoSec as it was back in 2005, 2006. Was working for a government contractor, and it was around the time information records management was just coming to bear, and HMRC ended up losing a couple of disks with people's records on, 25 million I think that went missing, and it kind of spawned a lot of focus on central government providers to look at information security more seriously, and it was kind of one of those stereotypical moments of I stepped forward when asked to sort of, does anyone want to kind of have a look at this, and the rest of the organization seemed to step back. So from there it's kind of grown and really just kind of lit a fire with me, because I mean it's just been absolutely fantastic since then. I've not taken the traditional route, so prior to that my sort of background was operations management, project management, etc. Dropped out of university back in sort of the late 90s because I just didn't fancy repeating my A levels, or that's kind of how it felt. And just kind of wanted to do something different. At the time, sort of around 2007, I got the opportunity to go and spend some time with the National School of Government, and pretty much got taken through the information assurance standards as they were, and just kind of went from there. And I've sort of built my career based on sort of, I guess, experience and exposure to both public and private sector roles and disciplines, both from sort of the technology side of things, all the way through to the sort of the operational roles. And I guess my sort of turning point was when I joined one of the big four consulting houses back in 2013, 2014. And for me there, it was just kind of sort of, I guess, further exposure and experience in kind of how organizations manage their security. And it's been great ever since. So certainly not taking the academic route, but feel that very much my sort of the approach for managing people, because this is very much a people industry, has kind of helped with that success. Didn't go through kind of university, didn't take the sort of traditional educational background, and I've been very fortunate that I've been very passionate and enjoy what I've done, and it's kind of demonstrated that in my kind of career as successes, but also kind of very humble as to kind of what's ahead of me and who I work with. And I'm sure there's absolutely amazing people on this call at the moment that can do things with computers that I could probably only ever dream of. But for me, I try and kind of stay humble and continue to learn. I've kind of since gone back to university, working through a master's program of cybersecurity at the moment out at Warwick, just to kind of sort of, well, I think validate myself more than anything else that I can do it and I can be there. Being the only one that didn't graduate from my family was kind of a tough one for the parents. But I've gone through some of the vocational courses, whether they be kind of audits, IC squared, etc. Sorry, not anything ISARC or Vladlena, I'm afraid, but they've been right for me. So it's, yeah, a bit of a patchwork quilt, I guess, of kind of career progression. It didn't exist as a career choice when I kind of came through sort of education. That's probably my biggest regret. I wish I got into it sooner, but I was taking things apart back in sort of the early 90s, and for fear of having to pay for them to kind of replace them, was very much learned how the inner workings of computers from an early age, and have just followed passions ever since.
Very interesting. So you've engaged in sort of high risk industries, government, you know, Big Four, consulting with you know, high risk organizations, but sounds like built from the ground up.
Yeah, massively. And I think that the two things I kind of credit to, well, I don't want to say my success because that sounds like I'm a bit of a dick, but kind of my progress as to where I am now, it is firstly, as I've sort of said, is that humility that kind of every day should be a school day, and you recognize that, and just the ability to talk and communicate with people. I think they're two of the fundamental skills to be successful in information security or cyber or whatever your term is.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. So Michael, just to bring you in with the same questions, what, you know, your role and how did you find your way into cybersecurity?
Yeah, so my current role, I've just started a new role in the Cabinet Office in the Centre of Government, working with what we call the Government Security Group. So our job is to set the standards for how security is done by the rest of government, across government, and to help all the departments and teams do security appropriately. So it's a interesting role, new role, and my job is to really look forward at the next 3 to 5 years and work out what things we need to be doing now that will help us for the big risks coming in the next 3 to 5 years. I've got a fairly unusual background even for a software developer. So I studied computer games design at university. I really wanted to write computer games. And then having gone through university and kind of learned to program a little bit, I managed to bluff my way into a job writing low-level C code for bingo terminals, which was both not the programming I'd intended to do, nor the games that I'd intended to do. But I spent 3 years writing very low-level hardware, BIOS and code and stuff like that. Moved on to into London and worked in a startup doing low-latency financial trading. Worked with a games company writing code for Xboxes and PlayStations, and then 15 years ago took a job with the Guardian newspaper working on their website. And at the time I had no real expertise of the web in any way, shape or form, but spent 7 years there really learning how to build really scalable systems, and more importantly learning how software development is done in large teams in an agile manner. And I think that really changed me quite a lot. And I left after 7 years, so 10 years ago, give or take, to join government at the formation of the Government Digital Service, when GDS, as we called it, was traveling around government trying to bring people into the modern development era, teach them how to develop things as part of a team, how to use agile software development mechanisms. And I was a technical architect, and for my sins I was sent to Birmingham for a year and met Jim and worked with Jim on what is still one of the best projects I've ever worked on, with a team of people in government who would otherwise have you know, not had the opportunity to write software in the way we did. And we introduced them to Python, we introduced them to agile software development, to DevOps, to cloud, to all of the interesting things. Watched people really grow when they were given the chance to. But one of the things that I'd learned when I joined government was just how little expertise a lot of people had in security. Security was still the domain of essentially men wearing wizard robes and special hats. Like they used weird incantations and talked about IL4 and IL5 and all kinds of strange words that meant nothing to a lot of the developers just trying to get their jobs done. And so I very quickly shifted into security. I'd had a long interest in it and spent a lot of time working with some of the experts at GCHQ and some of the experts from across government to really understand how we can apply the security principles in modern software development. And I really felt that a lot of the standards that were written in government for how to do secure software were designed back in the 80s when software development was still done by teams being given, you know, books of requirement documents. And that's just not how software is developed in 2010. Apologies, I've got two children running around in the sprinkler just outside his come past. So yeah, I spent a lot of time trying to help teams deliver. And I think the key thing that I've learned over that time is that it's very easy to paint security as being about saying no, preventing people from doing stuff. But the reality is our job is to enable people to do things safely and securely, to make it possible to do the things we want to do in a way that works. And that's something I've really believed in. I've traveled around government. I consulted. I was an independent for a bit before coming back into the Cabinet Office to try and make things better. So long and varied. Does that answer your question, Jim?
Yeah, so again, like Vladlena, I think a technical background, but sort of intrigued by maybe wanting to demystify something of security and get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, very much. I think it's probably one of the most damaging parts of security culture is the mysteriosity of, I'd love to tell you why you have to connect widget A to FOB B, but I'd have to kill you if I did. Like, it's just not helpful to anybody.
Cool. So I mean, let's widen that sort of thought up, because we wanted to talk about, you know, what advice you have as, you know, as folks who have, you know, as Christian says, you know, everyone's got the imposter syndrome, but as folks who've reached a certain level in the industry and are recognised for their contribution in cybersecurity, what advice do you have to, you know, maybe somebody who is a school leaver, or a recent graduate, or just anyone who wants to get into cybersecurity? Sounds interesting. What kind of advice would you give?
So I think for me, and probably a little bit to Osman's question about kind of, I guess, a path through to application security, regardless of where you're starting from, whether it's an academic kind of what's next after higher education, or whichever level you've kind of sort of deciding you're at that crossroads, is to look at kind of working on or taking on some real world problems. One of the big things we've seen over the last kind of 12, 18 months is a real explosion in the kind of security research community. And I guess the problems that these people go away after and go and help to solve. And there's certainly a kind of almost a real momentum now in the whole vulnerability disclosure management, etc. There's still some absolute kind of shocking kind of horrors about how these come about. But I think if you're kind of starting from zero and actually you know what you want to get into, but just not too sure how to, is I'd start looking at those problems that big business, small business, and everyone in between has. And I guess just taking perhaps some of the bigger players like Facebook and Google, working on some of their programs and seeing where they're trying to kind of, I guess, identify problems, certainly on a security point of view, I think it's a great way to get into, because it's a low barrier and low cost of entry. And all that really needs is for you to spend time in investing and kind of thinking about their problems and how you can help them out. And I mean, you can, if you're successful with it, you get paid at the same time, which is fantastic. And the kind of published programs that organizations have, I think give a good indication as to kind of what they're trying to sort of tackle or trying to solve. Not to mention taking kind of the OWASP kind of components to it. Being engaged in communities like this, I think will help, because Frank's being quite, is contributing on the chat. We're here. Everyone's kind of offering a view and opinion, and there's nothing better than the community. And it's one of the things I'm really proud to kind of help support Nathan and Jim. There's no sponsorship here. Pinsent Masons don't do anything other than perhaps kind of hosting with a facility in previous times, or just wanting to contribute, because there's nothing stronger in our industry than that sense of community, strength of community. And through these groups, we might find opportunities for work placements, apprenticeships, roles, etc., etc. And I think that should be certainly not undervalued. And I guess finally, there's the academic track, either in traditional institutions or actually kind of following the I guess the games, the CTFs, the sort of the exercises that are run and hosted by organisations across the globe, and start to build your experience through those accomplishments.
Yeah, quite interesting. I mean, particularly on the community aspect of it. I think like Michael, I was quite involved in the DevOps transformation in IT operations that happened, and I see that happening now in security, that there's a lot more that people can get involved in. So I mean, Michael, do you see community as one of those opportunities that the people who are on the outside have got to get in, essentially?
So I strongly believe that security is a broad church. There are lots of different gaps that need different skills, and being part of the community is a really valuable way of learning for a whole selection of people. And it's even things like, you know, joining the OWASP Slack instance and seeing the conversations that go on in there. There are people who are happy to help you, to give up some of their time to help you learn stuff. I don't think there is any magic way in security, and you know, I'm sure Vladlena with the ISACA hat on will you know, like to talk about the ISACA route, but like there are lots and lots of routes into security. You don't have to go through a specific academic career. You don't have to be a software developer. You don't have to have a background in a certain area. The things that I think really help for the majority of security roles, and not all, there's a set of compliance roles and things where it's not needed, but most of the people who work in reverse engineering, penetration testing, or application security that I know are pretty much insatiably curious people. They want to take things apart and know how they work. And it's part of that, wanting to understand how they work, that helps you start to think about how people might misuse it, why they work together and why the components work together. And that's something that's very hard to teach. You can learn how certain things work and how certain things connect together. Like you can learn software development languages and things, and those will help you. But at the root of it all, the desire to take things apart, see how they work, and put them back together and hope they work once you put them back together is pretty common amongst a lot of security people. I think if you're a young person considering, do I need to go to university in order to be in security? Do I need to do anything else? There are so many other routes open today. I mean, the apprenticeships are really good, the ones that I've seen. You know, you can take modern apprenticeships that take you up to degree level understanding. So you can have the equivalent of a diploma and a level 5 apprenticeship, which is a degree. So you can get the same kind of learning just while being paid to do a job. And I think it's a really valuable way of getting in if you don't enjoy that academic experience. But I'm going to play both sides of the coin at this point, which is there are lots and lots of security people who do not have a strong technical background, and that it holds them back sometimes, particularly in the penetration testing area. There are a lot of people who can run scripts to test for security holes on software, but they don't know how to modify it, how to write the code around it. And a little bit of Python programming will go a long way if you want to do CTFs or penetration testing or any of that red team activity. But equally, one of the other things we're really missing in information security at the moment is a good understanding of people. And so humanities studies, philosophy, the understanding of how people work is also incredibly important. And we don't have enough of that either. So on both sides, I want to say we're not technical enough, and we don't have enough humanities graduates in information security at the moment.
Very interesting. So curiosity, but and deep technical understanding, but also it's broader than that. Vladlena, I don't know whether you want to pick up on what Michael said. I know that you're you lead in Aston, one of the academic institutions in the city. What are your insights on getting into the industry?
Well, I will probably backtrack by a couple of years. I remember sitting in a very a beautiful and plush ballroom in one of the top London hotels in 2017 at an award ceremony for SC Media and so on. It was around cybersecurity, leadership, and so on. And the host mentioned, could those of you who have come into cybersecurity by chance stand up? And I thought there would be maybe 1 or 2 people, maybe 2 or 3 on the fringes. About 2/3 of the entire hall, got probably about 300 people strong, got up and said, we ended up in cybersecurity not because we started a career there. And to be honest, I think this is a theme that is recurring, and I notice it quite often, particularly as ISACA, just as OWASP holds stakeholder or community engagement or membership events and so on. So not too long ago, we ran an event at Barclays with one of the, all of the key people in its internal IT audit, about 300 strong department at Barclays Bank and so on. We had people who held very, very senior roles as managing directors and so on. And again, the same question was, what was your background? And the answer was legal, business, music. Pattern recognition is good. It serves you really well in the cybersecurity field. So what I understand, or what I have seen over the years, particularly engaging with ISACA, is that there's not a right or wrong entry into this sector. It is what you like and what drives you to enter a specific area of interest. But equally, if you say that you work in cybersecurity, and I agree with Michael on this, is that it's such a varied field. So when I say that I work around cybersecurity risk management, my day-to-day job at Aston Business School does not involve any pen testing, for example, but I do a lot of SAR, suspicious activity reporting, investigative work on the dark web. We do everything from poverty reduction from the blockchain to risk management of DLT and so on. So not that I have covered that in my university years back in 2000, there was no blockchain at the time, as you all know, particularly nobody cared about its risks and so on, or auditing. But what I totally agree that curiosity and innovativeness, I would say, of a person is very, very important. Not to downplay the importance of academic education. I think that it is important, particularly from my perspective, to have this solid ground, not to regret that you have not done that at some point in your life and so on. Obviously, there's different and so on. But I think it is important to do a degree, and then it teaches you to be a problem solver, to find solutions through, how you will approach your career in the future, to learn to be a critical thinker and so on. And then perhaps you can look into various certifications, perhaps, as Michael mentioned. And ISACA does offer quite a lot of opportunities for those who are very early in their careers, such as cybersecurity nexus fundamentals, for those who just want to tip their toes into the cybersecurity world, to a very value-added high-level certifications for those who have at least 5 years of experience and are ready to certify it in CISO, CISM, or Seagate, or CRISC, and so on, depending on which area they would like to go into. But again, we need all sorts of people in this profession, and I work with very talented men and women who are absolutely fantastic, who also amazing problem solvers and so on, and we just need more workforce. So it's a fantastic sector to join.
So that's really interesting, and you've kind of guessed my next question, actually. But I suppose just to play back, I think what all of you said is that it's a very broad church. It's from technical to psychology and everything in between. There's unstructured approaches, getting involved in communities. There's very structured approaches, getting certifications and studying, at university. And Christian, I think your background encompasses kind of all of that. I've got a question for all three of you, and I'll start with you, Christian. But would you recommend to a young person that cybersecurity is a good career to get involved in, or would you
Massively,
warn
massively. It's going to be for around. It's the only industry I can see being a job for life in this day and age. It will change and it will evolve, and you might have more robots to control as the AI takes hold and the dark blockchain kind of becomes more common in the enterprise. But everyone will need an element of digital security, and whether that's advice and guidance or hands-on keyboard working through kind of the lines of code to do something out. So if you're looking for job security, it's an industry to get into. And it couldn't be more kind of the forefront of industry and the kind of industrial revolution around technology. Coupled with privacy, I think you're onto a winner with regards to a career, because there's so much choice as well. You can be in management and people roles, you can be in training awareness, you could be in hands-on kind of development, architecture, technical. There's such a broad church here, which makes it absolutely fantastic, in my humble opinion.
Very interesting. Very interesting. What's your take on that, Vladlena?
Well, I would like to highlight the importance of this area, and it probably important of it growing in the next several years to come, particularly if we may or may not see economic downturn looming ahead of us after the pandemic. We need to think of sectors will be affected, which sectors will grow, and so on. And we are very cautious that quite a lot of sectors will undergo perhaps a recession or stagnation, job losses, and so on. Security is the one that would not. So we look at it's a future-proof area. And I also wanted to highlight the fact that we do need to have a diverse workforce as well. So not only we need more people working in this, but we also need more a diverse workforce, both from the perspective of gender and neurodiversity and whatnot. And I also wanted to say thank you to our fantastic OWASP colleagues, and I could see Nathan there, for contribution to the work that Isaka was doing with Cyber Girls First. Not too long ago, he was pictured next to Boris Johnson on our video materials and so on that we shared with schools. And so we would like to see a more diverse, a more wider, I suppose, many more people coming into the sector in the future. So it is one of those areas which would be future-proofed.
Yeah, that's such an important point, particularly around encouraging that diversity of workforce. I mean, when I started my career, cybersecurity seemed to have been colonized by, angry white middle-aged men with irritable bowel syndrome. But would you just say a few words for us about Cyber First Girls, the initiative, because I think it's wonderful, and it'd be great just for everyone to hear what that's about.
Right. So not too long ago, I approached Nathan. Well, actually, as Nathan and Jim approached me to come and talk to OWASP at this meeting, I said, could you reciprocate and could you do us a favor and contribute to this event that we are doing with schools? So we are working with a charity called Cyber Girls First, which is led by amazing Pat Ryan, OBE, and a former naval intelligence officer. She's only 82, and she runs loads of different events and charity work. And in the past, she has done things like equipping all 249 hospitals in the UK with computers, things like that. And she now works with schools around the UK, and Birmingham was lucky enough to secure a spot for Birmingham schools to be engaged in this initiative. So we had 4 or 6 schools around Birmingham area who signed up to a face-to-face meeting in March. Obviously, that was not possible to take place, and we thought of how do we keep the momentum going. And as schools sort of asked the academia to help them with meaningful learning materials and so on, we engaged with Cyber Girls Fast, and loads of people, amazing role models, sent us video materials. In the case of Nathan, we had an interview, and we structured those areas, the media around learning content. So the school children had to solve different puzzles or come up with different solutions to a security problem. For example, as trivial as your sibling is stealing your food from the refrigerator, what are the cyber controls, measures, and so on you could introduce to make sure that doesn't happen? So it gets them to think about how to apply cybersecurity measures or approaches in their everyday life and so on. So as of today, we had loads of submissions and lots of interest from schools. So we had 20 schools registered across 3-year groups, year 7, year 8, year 9. So almost 700 children participated in this. And on Monday, we're giving out prizes.
No, that's awesome. Such a fantastic initiative, and I think anybody who is interested in supporting that, you know, I'm sure Vladlena would be happy to hear about it. So yeah, I mean, you know, cybersecurity, a job for life, an industry we need to get more people into. What would you dissent from that, Michael? Do you think would you encourage a young person to get involved?
I would definitely encourage everybody to get involved. I kind of agree it's a job for life. I think, again, it's a broad church. There are some roles that won't exist and some that will. And there was a comment in the chat, I'm trying to remember, Dinora said, what field do I think will be most in demand in the future? So I think there's a slight difference between most in demand versus, you know, what fields will continue for a long time. I think all of the core information security fields are going to continue for quite a long time. People will always need advice. They'll need technical specialists in cryptography, in penetration testing and so forth. But the most in demand, and the one that I think is probably going to grow the fastest over the next decade or so, is the combination of data science and cybersecurity. So when I go meet incident response teams, so people who you bring in when you've had an incident, they spend a lot of time, you know, copying over all the logs, finding out what happened, and applying statistical models to that kind of stuff is actually incredibly powerful. It's a reasonably rare combination of skills. Somebody I know in the Bank of England was trying to hire people into the team, and they said, you know, I'd love it if you could program, if you knew cybersecurity, and if you're a data scientist. And he was like, if I'm lucky, I'll get 2 out of 3, and I train you in the 3rd. Most people only do 1. And actually, that combination of skills is going to be incredibly valuable.
Yeah, very, very interesting. You know, AI, ML, and security, an emerging field, really. So so just before we kind of take a break, really, just on the theme of leadership in security, just wanted to talk a little bit about the idea that, you know, everyone is a leader in security. There's this, you know, there's this idea that, you know, it's all of our responsibility to take hold of security and lead, but I think the reality is that that's often not the case. Christian, I'm interested in your reflections on that. Obviously, as a CISO, you've got a lot of probably lawyers trying to get on with their job who want security to get out of the way, to be honest, a lot of the time. What's your view on leadership in cybersecurity as a kind of a broader topic, if you like?
It's hard. It's not for the faint-hearted. And I think a lot of people get hung up on where they report and their title, what they're called. And the idea about kind of leading your organization, your business, your people, wherever you sit, it can kind of apply to every role, in my opinion, that actually kind of practicing good security ethics practices and encouraging others to do the same and being responsive to needs as and when they come up are kind of all part and parcel of the territory. Unfortunately, I think we spend a lot of time nasal gazing. I'm sort of reporting into the IT director. I should be reporting somewhere else. I don't have the budget, don't have the people. I'm struggling with this, that, and the other. And actually, I think we lose out on what's important, on what we can do. And one of the things I try and encourage at Pinsent and have done kind of previously and other roles is that, like, everyone has the potential to demonstrate kind of good behaviors when it comes to security. You don't need a fancy title or reporting line to the board or wherever it is. And it's actually kind of more around accountability and people taking that accountability of their role, of their responsibilities around kind of the business. And whether you're one person in a single team or you're one of many in a large team, you're all there to safeguard that business in some way or another. It's a team sport at the end of the day. So working with your peers or business partner stakeholders needs to kind of come together. And I think that's one of the things that I kind of really kind of look back and reflect on, is kind of how I've been as a people manager, as a project manager through my time, because it's effectively managing stakeholders. And I mean, okay, I'm probably in one of the most difficult spaces at the moment, because my stakeholders are lawyers and they love nothing more than a good argument on why they should do something. And it's hard going up against that community where they argue for a day job. That's their profession, right? And their scrutiny and level to detail is kind of second to none. But it's kind of finding out what's important to them and working out what's important for me, and kind of either meeting in the middle if we can, or conceding, but at least they're aware of kind of what's going on. So for me, that kind of sort of, I guess, sums up the sort of the approach. It's not defined or exclusive to senior board members or kind of senior roles in organizations. Security leadership is something we should all be doing.
Yeah, very interesting. Michael, how have you thought that through in government, making people feel accountable and take that critical risk stance rather than thinking it's someone else's responsibility?
Yeah, so government's quite a unique organisation in that way, for quite how broad it is, and it's not really one organisation. It's like 50 odd organisations warring with each other, united by a common pension. The change that's happening at the moment, driven in part by some of our colleagues in the centre in NCSC, is trying to change the mindset that the users aren't the enemy. And in fact, we often used to talk about, people are the weakest link in security, and we've started to shift that round to people are in fact your greatest asset in security. A phishing email works because people click it, but it also fails because your staff look at it and go, that's really suspicious, and report it to you. And actually, if you can train your staff into reporting suspicious stuff, you'll get a lot more interesting things out of it than you will by yelling at them to not click that link. Because the reality of day-to-day work for 99% of the staff who work today is that they receive emails and click the links in them. That is what they are required to do for their job. So a security person saying, well, if you just didn't click that link, it would be a lot better, is us failing as a security profession, I think, to give advice that's useful and practicable. And one of the things that I find, and it's very common in government, I suspect it's common in our industry, is I call shadow security. So you use the term shadow IT. That's where people don't like the IT that the company provides and set up their own equivalent. So they can, they set up their own Wi-Fi routers, or they do work on their computer at home because they need to. But shadow security is where people make determinations themselves about what they think the security processes might be. So they don't know what's good or what's bad. They just say, oh, well, we'll always set the password to this known secure password. We're always going to use the same really secure password because that makes everything more secure because we know it's a secure password. And you get people without good guidance from security making up their own security rules, and that sometimes those security rules work and sometimes they represent that person's view of the world, and I think it's it's really important to recognize that the reason that happens is because people fundamentally in your organization are good people who want to get the job done, and mostly they want to keep the data secure. They want your company to stay solvent. They don't want you to be, ransomwared or to go bankrupt because of phishing or anything like that. They come up with these rules because they believe in that stuff. And yeah, there's a thing around malicious insiders, but in reality, our users are the strongest thing we have in security, and we need to use them that way and ensure they're given the tools that help them make us more secure as a group. Yeah, quite interesting. Support the users rather than seeing them as the enemy. Vladlena, last time we met and talked, we talked about the ISACA C-risk qualification, as I recall, which is a fantastic qualification in understanding risk. But how can we help folks who security isn't their day job understand risk better?
Well, I wanted to reflect on the work that actually both ISACA, IAC, and GCMS and ROCU, West Midlands ROCU, have been doing over the last year and a half by working through the organizational culture and cybersecurity. So it probably echoes with what the work that we've been doing echoes with Michael's comments that perhaps putting the blame on end users and thinking of them as unruly and well, the weakest links, they're always called as humans. The best thing to probably do for organizations in managing risks is empowering the end user and making them understand what is their reason for observing security policies, how they can contribute and in fact positivize the view of risk management within the organization. So I think that I can just second what Michael said about the importance of end users as such, but then equally there are very much structured frameworks for ensuring cyber risk management, and those are maintained and looked after by ISACA amongst other professional bodies as such. So, but then you look back at 2020 reports and statistics, particularly as Cybersecurity survey 2020 came back just before we went into lockdown, and I'm sure that Michael had a site of it. It's published over the last 5 years by both GCMS and National Cybersecurity Center, outlining how businesses act around cybersecurity and how they progress with various strategies around it and so on. And it was very interesting, and I hope that we will pick up the conversation, that before everyone went into the lockdown, only 20% of organizations had implemented secure ways of remote working, and just as the pandemic hit. So could you imagine 80% of UK businesses were not prepared, did not have appropriate security measures in place, policies, etc., that would enable what happened over the last few months. So we will pick up this conversation a little bit later, but I think that we are in a very interesting point in time. No, absolutely. And also, perfect segue into the break. So organizational culture at the core of making people take responsibility for security. I think now is a great time to break for 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 7:20, and we'll talk about the cyber landscape that we're all facing going forward. So see you then.
See you in 10 minutes.
Thanks, Nathan. Jim.